Hi. So today I'm going to speak on open relating a little bit. I recently had the privilege to do a mini workshop at Good Vibrations, a Bay Area sex shop chain in Santa Cruz, and for First Friday in October. So thank you very much to those at Good Vibrations who allowed me into their space, and we had a lot of fun. So I just did like a little 20-minute intro, like open relating 101, or what I like to say is choiceful relating. And I'm not going to go that long here, but I'll just kind of go over kind of some main points that I covered. And I'm here in my garden. It's so beautiful. Very grateful. So, I do like to use the word choiceful because so many folks, there's a lot of divisiveness, like even divisiveness within the open relating or polyamory community around like better like hierarchy around types of relating. So I like to say choiceful because, we are we are in a culture of monogamy. We are all sold to some degree a fairy tale story of finding the one to complete us, very romantic, very heteronormative, and even if that style of relating is for you, it's still a very, very harmful message, because one, usually takes a lot of work. We don't live in a fairy tale. And then it's very difficult to know if you're choosing something when the alternative is to like have to work really hard and potentially be shamed or ostracized, or, it's not really a choice. So even though, especially in the Bay Area of California, there's a lot of openness, like definitely some solid, very well established polyamory communities, as well as many cities, it's still difficult. We still live in a monogamous leaning society. So I think it's really awesome to have these sort of conversations and opening up, because even if exclusivity sexually or romantically is for you, there's a lot to that we can all learn from the open relating community about open dialogue, consent. Because if we're basing our relationships off of assumptions, there's a lot of non-consent that happens. So that's one thing I've loved about being in open relationships, is there's a lot less assumptions and a lot more kind of just a need to have very forward and proactive conversations. Is this a choice? Yes or no? We don't know. We talk about it. So I like to kind of start with that orientation, because however anyone wants to show up in their romance, maybe they're aromantic or sexual, maybe they're asexual, or intimacy, we are in the midst of a cultural shift away from this fall of patriarchy, hopefully. Assumptive relationships, possessive relationships, jealousy being, seen as love. And also there's nothing wrong with jealousy. It's just a feeling. But the more jealous we are, that doesn't signify love, especially when we're socialized to be jealous. Also, jealousy happens in open relationships. I will talk about compersion. So let me jump into it. I'm just going to go over a few bullet points. Open relating 101. So I like to use the term open relating because it is ambiguous, but that is kind of the point of open relating. Like, you're designing your relationships on purpose. And I personally don't use the word polyamory for myself, or non-monogamy for various reasons, but just know that if somebody is using the word non-monogamy or polyamory or open relating, they might be using that word on purpose, or they might not. For me, I do like the term open relating for myself. Semantics. So, choiceful. There's a lot of different structures within open relating, from like relationship anarchism, which in an overly simplified way basically refers to those of us. I'm trying to do that, currently exploring that, where basically we are wanting to break apart intimacy, understanding that intimacy can, be like referring to like financial or living situation or sex or commitments. There's so many different ways that we relate to each other, and many aspects of that are relating, whether they have to do with sex or not. So instead of trying to get all of our intimacy needs met from one person, which is actually a little bit unrealistic, and then another important piece of relationship anarchism is that we are trying to like care for everybody's feelings. Like if I'm having sex with someone, it doesn't make their feelings more important than my other friend who I'm not having sex with. It might make their feelings more likely to be like bigger or vulnerable, but basically what I've liked about exploring relationship anarchism is that my world doesn't get small, like highly concentrated around just one person, which even happens in open relating, because of nesting, because of partnerships. So there are many different types of structures. So I'm kind of like naming that opposite extreme, like opposite from how we're conditioned around exclusivity. There's kitchen table poly, which typically refers to, if you have multiple partners that like they know each other, and you could like hypothetically have sit around a kitchen table and have a meal together. So somewhat familiar with metamors who are your partner's partner. Many different types. There's hierarchy. Our society privileges those, especially heteronormative couples, but there's couples privilege like financial, for example. The marriage industry is like one of the biggest industries, at least in this country, maybe the world. So tax benefits, social benefits, all these things. People, who have historically gotten more rights, who are gay, like open relating folks don't have that. So like people who are open relating might have to consider, like, can they be open about it? Like, are they going to lose their job? Are they going to be shamed? Are their children going to be taken away? Like, so these things are still real, very much. So even within open relating, there still is privilege to couples. So if like I'm in a couple with somebody and then we date somebody else, there's a power dynamic because we are like more united, and then that other person who's entering into a new relationship, that there's just power dynamics, and power dynamics show up all the time. It's just one thing I like about open relating is like bringing more overt and explicit conversations around power dynamics, so you're less likely to abuse power dynamics and treat people like objects. You gotta build your resilience if you're gonna be open relating. How are people gonna react? Who are you gonna tell? Is it open? Where do you live? Does it feel comfortable? This is your private life, like you get to choose. I consider much of my adult life to be a monogamy hangover. I knew when I was like 18 that I wanted to be open relating, probably, yeah. And but I still move towards committed and like longer term thinking. So I've very much like been in monogamy hangover land for many years, because we just have this tendency to slip back into like giving up our power or giving up our autonomy, or just like, if somebody's more monogamish than the other person in a partnership, well, the person who is more monogamish or monogamy leaning, or is not willing to do the work to learn the communication skills needed for a inherently more complex situation, they've got all of society's got their back. So there's a lot of reasons why I included, like, that's like a vulnerability share, like so many mistakes, and like giving up my own power to like, oh, I'll just do that because that's what's easiest. Yeah. Okay, so those are some general terms, orientations around like different kinds of structures. This is not comprehensive. This is very much an intro. I just want to say one thing that was like one of the biggest light bulbs that went off when I read Jessica Fern's book, Polysecure. Also, Polly Wise is coming out this year. This is huge, to me at least. Is somebody open relating or poly because it's a choice, like it's a lifestyle choice, or are they open relating because it's like a part of who they are? For me, it's not a choice. I'm queer. I feel claustrophobic with just one person. Like, it's not an option. It's just simply not an option, and there's no conversation to have around that. For others, they could like be open or exclusive, or they're open because it keeps things healthy in their relationship, like fresh. It forces the difficult conversations, or they're swingers, or like it's a lifestyle choice. But it comes down to, is it a choice, and they can ebb and flow. So I think that's really important to note, like for yourself, or if you're in a relationship, like, is this more of a choice, like a lifestyle choice or preference, or is this like a part of who you are? For me, it's inseparable from like my feminist work. It's inseparable from my mental health. You know, all these things are one and the same for me, and it's not there's no conversation to have around it. And I do recommend Polysecure. There's a lot of good resources out there now. Find Facebook groups, get community, get support. I am a somatics practitioner and intimacy coach, so I work with couples and individuals, like doing some rewiring around this, and get support. But bring in as much support as you can. It's important to take steps if you're moving from monogamy to opening up a relationship in a couple or a pair, to really take it slow. Read books together. If you are kind of merged or united, if you have codependent tendencies, you got to take care of those first before, of course, like healing and growth and our processes are non-linear. However, before just going on dates with other people or just like blowing your thing up, take it slow, disentangle a little bit first, create some autonomy. You gotta build trust, like be proactive. There's these things that you want to take care of before like inherent, like likely triggers happen, where like new people and new relationship energy can be really triggering. So like if one person in a pair has new relationship and the other person doesn't, that can be really difficult and challenging. So do some pre-work before opening up. Huge. Also, codependency is normalized in our culture. So once again, this is something that exclusive or monogamous folks could learn from the open relating community. Just being autonomous. It's hard to want someone you already have. So creating some distance for the health of your desire and passion over time will be good. And if you can't do that, then maybe there's something else to address. Like, are you, like, do you have other community? Do you have other friends? Like, do you, is there a trust issue? Like, so just reinforcing tighter boundaries and not actually going to address the actual trust issue. You got to work through that. I hope that makes sense. So that's something that Jessica Fern addresses in her book. It's like, if we have these structures like marriage, or like, okay, you don't have sex with anybody else, that means you love me and I don't have to worry about like that. We just don't have to talk about trust building as much, because we just know we're going to stay in our safety zone, like a playpen. It doesn't actually build intimacy. It can, because it can create safety, and then you can build intimacy, because it's hard to build intimacy if you're not feeling safe. But it doesn't inherently actually build intimacy. It's just like a framework. And it's kind of a facade, because we've been socialized to think that it does, to think that it signifies intimacy. But as we all know, like, we've met many people who have been married for years, or like couples, and they're like doing a business and like doing all these things together, but like, you know, maybe it's like a business. You know, sometimes relationships are treated like that, which is also fine, especially if you're consenting to it, or it's like transactional. Energy is energy. We only have so much of it, so it's understandable. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, a couple more things. Pro tip: compersion is not an antidote to jealousy, although it helps. So compersion is a term for when we feel happy for our partner's joy or pleasure, even if we are not the ones giving that joy to them. Excuse me. If my lover or partner is getting some joy or goodness from somebody else, it's usually referring to sex, but I invite people to use this term or find another term, you know, to go and if your partner's finding joy just in flirting or just in their job, like, we got to be happy for each other. This is, it's a muscle to exercise. Get your resources. And remember, love is not limited. Time and energy are. Okay? So thank you so much. And I hope you're having a beautiful fall.